Welcome to the Racist War, coming to you on time. Thankfully, it's Monday afternoon in Perth. You're joined by myself, Fenian, and as usual, I have Nolsey. And mixing it up a bit on this show, we've actually got an American guest who's going to join us for commentary. Cook, welcome, sir.
A pleasure, everyone. Thank you for having me on.
No worries. Is there like somewhere that other people know you from? Are you on any other shows or anything?
I'm on Zeke's show, Control Alt Delete. We play video games over there with Comrade and the boys.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I'm just diving into this blind because, look, Cook is just vouched for by Nolsey. So I'm just assuming he can comment on all this. And, yeah, well, look, just first thing to say before we get into the content is that we are now officially in election campaign mode. So the federal election has been called for the 3rd of May, which is only about 5 weeks away. There was a bit of a stuff up by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet in that they actually announced on their website that Australia's government was officially in caretaker mode, and they did that on the Thursday, which was the day before Albo went to the Governor General and asked for the election to be set. So yeah, they really gave it away that we knew that Albo was going to set the date on Friday, and we pretty much all knew it would be early May. So no surprises there. And so, yeah, I mean, in the end, that means that the election was only called about 2 weeks earlier than the 3-year mark. So it's pretty much right on time. We didn't get that really early election that a lot of people predicted because they thought that was going to happen because Labor's vote in the polls just kept tanking. And they thought, Albo basically is going to think, well, the longer we leave it, the worse it's going to get. So we need to have an election now. But no, it didn't turn out that way. Some people blame Cyclone Alfred. Others believe that they wanted to get in that 4th budget to get in a bit of some election bribery. But yeah, all that stuff we will comment on soon when we do cover the federal election. What we're going to kick off with first is our favourite topic, immigration. And wow, we're
Sir,
reassured.
please, come to country, please, soon, sir.
Well, look, can you believe, like, possibly, we're kicking off this episode with a bit of a white pill. But, this news is coming from the ABC. So, call me skeptical. But anyway, they're saying, let me read verbatim from this ABC article. It says, Australia's migration surge is receding faster than it grew, with the total number of temporary residents well on its way to pre-pandemic levels, even as migration shapes as a prominent election issue. So these are figures that they've gotten from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And it shows that while, of course, we had a huge spike in immigration after COVID, when all the restrictions were taken down, it's now on its way down again. If you have a look at the map, we had that peak that the ABS says was 536,000. So that was in the financial year 2022 to 23. But as Nolsey and I have covered several times, there were many other estimates that put that figure well above 600,000. I believe one of them was actually 640,000. So just keep that in mind. First off,
What's it news is like actually put it now like a future projection of 1.8 million over the next 3 to 4 years.
Well, yeah, and I mean there's Treasury forecasts as well that. Well, look, I'll just read that out. Actually, the Treasury forecasts are saying that in the next financial year, net migration is going to drop to 260,000. The problem is, though, all of those Treasury estimates that we've read before were never met. Net migration was always higher. So for the ABC to say this, and they also say that right now the official figures show that there is a rate of 100,000 people less each year, even though they really only have like one. But they only have one financial year's worth of data after the peak, which was 2022 to 23. So, yeah, call me skeptical, but I just don't believe any of this. I'd like to believe it.
Well,
And yeah, like there has been a bit of a dip, but no, the idea that it's going to pre-pandemic levels is just ridiculous. Um,
the question that I have is how much of this is simply moving the dial, right? Instead of immigration, they're shifting to other forms of visas, such as visitation visas.
yeah, I mean, something that we very often cover is that when there's a cut to permanent migration, like citizenship or being given a temporary visa, they simply shift onto temporary visas
Hmm.
instead. Um, so in this case, they're saying that the total number of temporary residents is on its way to pre-pandemic levels. Okay, what about the opposite side then? What about the amount of permanent residents that are staying here?
Yeah.
Because Labor never committed to cutting that. Uh, so So yeah, when these figures come out from Treasury, from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, I'm always very skeptical. And it seems to me that the ABC uh, hates the idea of tying housing prices and just general levels of inflation to migration. And migration groups are complaining that they feel like they're being stigmatized as a result, and that everyone is blaming them for the high cost of living that we have at the moment. Um,
I thought it was Jordan Knight, but it's God, what is this? What is his name? That's from What's It News.
from what news?
The guy from What's It News?
I don't think I'm familiar.
Mackenzie, whatever the fuck his name is. No, there's also Jordan Knight, which is the main one. He literally goes after politicians and gets arrested. And also, Mackenzie from What's It News also got arrested.
Oh wait, you mean when they went up to ask about migration and housing
Yes.
prices and go, oh yeah, I did see that. Yeah, yeah. Of course, there was other like bloody climate activists as well who were getting in on that. Um, but yeah, it does seem like when it comes to getting them to answer tough questions like that, or even just bring it up, yeah, you have to like crash a news conference to be able to broach that topic.
We literally can't. That's oh my god.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I want everyone to remember this figure, 260,000. That is supposed to be the level of net migration to Australia for the next financial year. And look, I guarantee whether it is Labor or the coalition who are in power in the next financial year, that figure will not be met. It will be in excess of 260,000 by far. Why do I say that? Because that's just always the general trend of net migration. Uh, the only reason why we got this sudden dip is because we were just adjusting to the post-COVID world when the government had to actually admit that yeah we were taking in way too many people once the restrictions ended, and now we've just got this very very small dip, and it's going to stay there. I reckon going into next year it'll still be like well over 300,000. And I think it's like One Nation policy. They actually just want zero net migration.
Hmm.
That's what I would be for. I would go a little further, of course, and make it that only those of European
You're like
extraction.
Indian.
Yeah, I hate it when people tell me they're Caucasian as well, Indians.
Oh God.
They do
As a
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, there's actually Brahmins. Like they say, like I am Brahmin, I am white like you, and I'm just looking at them like I'm going to fucking destroy you.
Dude,
Proceed.
that's that's
It's
hilarious.
hell.
I don't think I'd be able to stop myself from bursting out laughing in their face if someone said that to me. Oh goodness.
Uh, so, this next story we've only got two stories on immigration today. But this one I found interesting, basically because I have met some of these people. And this is about the huge amount of adoptions that were made of South Korean babies in the aftermath of the Korean War, which
Oh fuck.
was in the 50s.
Oh fuck.
Um, so, those of you who don't know about this, after the Korean War, there was around 220,000 babies and children that were adopted out to parents in Western countries. And I can think of actually two people. I remember there was this girl I knew. Uh, she was Asian, but total Australian accent, and she was adopted by two uh, white parents. And she said that like she had no idea who her real parents were or anything like that. There were there were never any records given to her. But anyway, in Australia, we received about 3,600 of those babies. And what they're kind of saying about these children, who are obviously adults now, is that they're sort of alleging sort of like a Korean stolen generation
Oh fuck me.
theory. So a report was just produced on this. So this is from South Korea's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. See, even that name there, Truth and
Oh,
Reconciliation, how similar does that sound to what we have here with Aborigines? But anyway, it said this: the government prioritized inter-country adoption as a cost-effective alternative to strengthening domestic child welfare policies. It said that the adoption
cool.
agencies had facilitated large scale inter country adoptions with minimal procedural oversight. The identities and family information of many children were lost, falsified, or fabricated. After being sent abroad,
So
adoptees
illegal.
left without appropriate legal protections. And yeah, now you've got a lot of like they're adults now who live in Australia and they're basically demanding to know who their real parents are. But
Damn,
very few
that's real
can
fucking
actually
bad.
answer.
You're in Australia. Oh wow, that's bad. Guess what? You know what? You know what? Like you want to set up like a clinic where we can actually teach them their own language and send them back.
We could do that.
Yeah. Oh
But I mean,
God,
but
how
if
many
you
clients do
if
we
you read
have?
this article, right, uh, the other thing that reminds me of the stolen generations is that they're basically saying it was wrong for these Australian parents to have adopted these children, and there was something like morally reprehensible on their behalf to have been involved as foster parents. Now, I would actually argue that, yeah, there is something wrong with it in that white people should not be raising the children of other races. That's the problem I have with it. But according to the ABC, it's like they're the ones partly responsible for erasing that child's history and family roots and cultural roots, etc. Even though they were put up for adoption.
The the one primarily responsible would be the government institution that genuinely erased their history. I remember a similar incident back during the 70s with something called the Duplessis Orphans. There was a organization set up in, I believe, southern Canada. Was it Ontario? And they were set up with the assistance of the CIA here in the States. And these poor children were used and abused horribly, and it was just human experimentation basically. And
Right.
that strikes me as something similar to what happened here, a gigantic and ridiculous social experiment, or worse, birth rate warfare.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand now why. I mean, look, when they suggest that, the parents are the ones sort of like to blame for this, um, isn't this also just a reminder that race matters? Because they can't escape from the fact that just as like when they go after parents or foster parents of the stolen generations, they're saying, that like Aboriginality was wiped out. Why is that? Well, because they didn't get to grow up in a racially Aboriginal family. And only a racially Aboriginal family could be the ones that would instill an Aboriginal culture. Well, it's the same kind of
Yes.
thing here. If you've
Hmm.
got white Western parents, you're not exactly going to get a Korean cultural upbringing. That's very true.
Exactly.
Um, but that shows like why a program like this should have just never existed in the first place. If the children did have to be adopted, then they should have only been adopted to Korean parents. Like simple as that. But no, it was 220,000 of them were actually shipped off to various Western nations. So, wow. I never knew it was that much. I had heard of this before, but I did not know it was that many bloody kids.
Yeah.
Also, who likes Koreans?
What?
Who likes Koreans?
So evidently not the
What?
Koreans themselves.
We don't get many Koreans here, do we? We get plenty of Chinese, but
I know we do.
we do.
Yeah. Next
We
meeting,
get,
man, big man. Like, I'll tell you.
There's I think you're probably going to see more Chinese simply due to the sheer weight of their population in comparison.
um, yeah, but I still don't think they'll be able to compete with the Indians in that regard.
That's
Um,
fair.
Sir? Sir?
yeah,
No, no compete, sir. No compete, sir.
and I mean, you guys in America, you guys are getting flooded by Indians as well, aren't you?
Oh
The
yeah, the
entire
entire
fucking
West
world.
Coast.
The entire world is being flooded with Indians.
You want
I
to know
know.
what's really funny?
Yeah.
Was it San Fran is getting literally inundated with fecal matter as a direct result of the Indian immigration into that city. Good old tech support.
Santa. Oh my god. And
Literal human feces on the streets. It's a horrifying circumstance.
well, they with the homosexual population there, I imagine that was already an issue before the Indians. Now it's making it worse.
Good old, good old incontinence from the homosexual community. Oh no.
Right. Oh Jesus. Okay, let's get off that topic. We'll move on to anti-Semitism. Just a couple of stories again. The Australian newspaper is having a bit of a whinge about this woman called Jesus Amen or Imen Jaffrey. She's a board member on the Australian Multicultural Council, and remember, this is basically the peak government body equipped with maintaining social cohesion in Australia. Because remember, as Chris Minns described Australian multiculturalism, it is fragile. So, and because it's our strength, we have to pour millions of dollars into it and get a whole bunch of non-whites onto this council. But
And
anyway,
Indians.
the harmony that the Australian Multicultural Council is tasked with promoting, they don't even seem to be achieving it within their own organization. And that's because you have both Muslims and Jews as board members. So
That's weird.
the latest complaint here was the use of social media, where Israel was criticized for selling their souls to the devil. This is what Miss Jaffrey had written about them.
Jews? Oh God, there's the souls of God, aren't they? Oh.
So Peter Gutwein, he is a prominent Jewish community advocate, as the Australian describe him, and he is also on the board of the Australian Multicultural Council. So he has basically been calling for her for Miss Jaffrey to be removed from that board. And here's another social media post from Miss Jaffrey. She said, "Australia, please stop supporting the killing of Indigenous people of Palestine. Oh, I forgot you didn't support your own Indigenous people on October 14th." There, she was talking about the referendum that we had October 14 in 2023. So there's nothing really new here. It's not like, even though I put this under anti-Semitism, all she's doing is just making the standard kind of criticisms of Israel's military. She's really not saying anything about citizens. She's certainly not saying anything about Jews specifically. She just has the usual social media stuff with hashtags such as Israel terrorist. But it's not a
Doubtless
surprise
she's
because Jews
been
don't like.
doubtless she's been trained as such. We have a similar individual in Ilhan Omar here in the States. And I would like to remind everyone not to get caught up in the play. They will object, they will institute protests, they'll put on a whole muss and a fuss, but at the end of the day, they are both looking to screw over you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I think our equivalent of Ilan Omar would be Fatima Payman. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's her parents were refugees from Afghanistan, and she grew up in Perth, and now she's a WA independent senator. She was elected on the Labor Party ticket, but then she thought that Labor were far too soft on the Palestinian question, so
Mm.
she's now independent, or maybe she has. I think she's formed her own party now called Australia Voice or something like that. That's a party guaranteed to go nowhere.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, she just might say some things every now and then that you consider to be, I don't know, based on foreign policy or whatever. But, at the same time, she wears a bloody lapel badge that has the Palestinian flag intertwined with the Aboriginal flag. And she will go after the same shitty social justice causes that anyone else goes after. The only thing that's a bit different is that they're not so friendly with Jews. That's all.
Yeah.
But it just amazes me that they go after like small figures like this. This woman is nowhere near the status of Fatima Payman. Yet this was actually the headline story on the Australian newspaper yesterday. Just this board member making a few comments about Israel. Okay, now another thing. Again, there's another story from the Australian. Was that Jewish groups have yet again condemned our current Labor government for continuing to fund UNRWA, UNRWA. So this is basically the relief fund via the United Nations, where aid is given to Palestinians, and obviously mainly given to Palestinians in Gaza, given the horrific war.
Mm.
Now, we did actually freeze our funding for UNRWA. I believe the United States did it as well, and maybe never unfroze it. I can't remember. But the reason for this, why they don't like this particular UN body, is because it was found that some of its employees were Hamas members.
Dear Lord.
Now, that is true. That is true. But this reminds me a lot of, like, when they criticise the CFMEU for having bikies as members. It's just like, the guys in Hamas, they have day jobs as well. And I would imagine that the aid industry in Palestine would be one of the biggest industries they possibly have. In other words, like one of the biggest employers that they would have in Palestine. So it makes perfect sense that a Hamas fighter would take as his day job working for a relief agency.
Yeah. People that care about their people tend to go into occupations which serve their people. And what has been serving their people except for international aid? Yeah.
Yes, and it's obvious, that what they really want to do here is just further starve the Palestinians of aid. And we know that Israel have actually purposely targeted aid convoys, including one that had an Australian citizen on board. The roof actually clearly stated that they were aid workers, yet they were taken out in an air attack. And that's just one example.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise that, they're still complaining about the fact that they're getting a little bit of humanitarian relief through the UN. All right. So we're onto the economy now. And look, I'm not going to go through, since the last episode, Peter Dutton has done his budget reply speech.
I got
I'm not going to go
fucked.
through I actually didn't watch. I just read the breakdowns of it. But we're not going to go through that because when we go through this section and others, we're going to be going through a lot of the policies that were announced in Peter Dutton's budget reply. So one of them is to do with the fuel excise tax. So
Terrible.
currently,
I can't. And the excise tax. Oh God, that's terrible. That means tariffs. That means, oh God, something so terrible. Oh wait.
well, look, the current rate is 50 cents per litre. I don't think there should be any. Remember, like, an excise tax is supposed to be, sometimes they get called a sin tax because it's applied to, items that maybe you shouldn't be buying, such as
Cigarettes,
cigarettes.
alcohol.
Yeah. Whereas, pretty much all other products only have GST, so a 10% sales tax on them. It's different for petrol, 50 cents per litre. Now, Dutton says that he would take that down to 25 cents per litre. However, he would only do so for 1 year. And I've heard this
No.
quite a few times. Like, because, fuel is a necessity, and yes, fuel can get quite expensive. Very often there's just calls to tinker with the excise tax, and it's only ever temporary. So Dutton knows how much money is raised via that excise tax, and so he would only ever make a cut to it a temporary measure. And then they contrast that to Labor's 70 cents a day tax tweak that you will have to wait 15 months for. Labor's tax cuts don't actually come into effect until July 2026. Okay, you've got a point there, but still, only 1 year of a fuel excise cut. I think we should just scrap the excise tax altogether because petrol is a necessity. I mean, there's some
You like
food.
eggs?
What?
You like eggs? You like things in your farmer's market? Oh, guess how they get there? Like a diesel in your fucking truck, and etc.
Right.
Well, the
Yeah, but
entire
also,
nation runs on it, right? Everything from the heavy machinery that operates the mines to the vehicles that get you where you need to go. The only way that you could justify having
Excise.
the syntax or whatever on it is if you openly admitted that the abos huff the stuff.
yeah, um, we do actually have. I don't know if it's still around. Maybe
I
Noel,
don't
you
have
know that
diesel.
Opal fuel,
Yes.
where it's basically it's petrol that is
Remove of
synthesized so that
benzines.
it doesn't get you high.
Yeah, no, the thing is, like, again, like, everything he spoke about was in, diesel and etc. Um, diesel doesn't have, like, native benzenes. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to a new Labor proposal. Albo actually announced this, I think, only yesterday on Insiders in his interview with David Spears. And that is, if re-elected, Labor would make it illegal for supermarkets to price gouge. Now, Albo said that a task force would be established that would answer to the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. That would be the first step here. Um, Now, Albo was actually repeatedly asked, like, can you actually define price gouging? How do you know when it has occurred? He wasn't able to answer that question. So a lot of people are, quite rightly been asking, well, if you don't even know what price gouging is, how can you possibly make it illegal and stop it?
Yeah.
Um,
This seems to me like a bunch of inverse talk for instituting price controls, which will, depending on the items, send the economy into a nosedive.
yeah, I mean, I'm still not for uh, price controls. I mean, for example, we've got a housing crisis, as you guys probably do as well.
Absolutely.
And the Greens here, they're saying the answer for that is putting a cap on rent. And no,
Uh,
I think that would be an absolute disaster. I think what would happen is that many of those properties would then become unprofitable and therefore be taken off the market. And you'd have this really bizarre situation where you'd have all these homeless people or people wanting a new rental, um, but they can't get them, even though there's rental markets there, but they're just vacant. Because that's what happens, like that's what happened in Venezuela when they
yeah.
put price controls on toilet paper and condoms. I remember was one of the items. Basically, you couldn't buy toilet paper or condoms anymore because it was unprofitable for stores to sell them at the mandatory price.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean that there's no reason why that can't happen to groceries as well. Um, so anyway, I did. The ABC had an explainer on how stopping price gouging can work. And they said, in general, the test for courts to determine in price gouging is whether a price bears no relationship to economic fundamentals. For example, a price hike that has nothing to do with a spike in supply costs.
Mm.
Uh,
All right.
I guess that is a definition. What's
yeah,
the? Does anyone remember the term for the airline industry does this a lot. It's where they will raise the price of tickets in concert in order to make more money on each individual ticket. What's the name of that?
oh, I'm not sure. Um,
Okay. Okay. Mr. Libertarian.
well, can I give a? I'll give an example of what I saw to be blatant price
Spike
gouging.
pricing.
Well, you guys know, I don't know if anyone else here is a Black Sabbath fan like me, that Black Sabbath are doing their last ever concert this year. Do you guys know that?
No.
They are.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to pull it off because Ozzy Osbourne is 76
Nearly
in a
dead.
wheelchair and has advanced Parkinson's disease. So I don't know how the hell it's going to work. But anyway, the concert is in Birmingham, and the other names on the bill are like Metallica, Anthrax, Mastodon, Tool, Guns N' Roses. It got like basically
All
like
the
What
goldies.
the fuck?
yeah, it's insane. Like the lineup is just wow. And I mean, when I saw this,
All right,
I
all
thought to
right, all
myself,
right.
these prices are
I'm
like
gonna quit
fucking
this
high,
show. And
right? Uh, so now, while I can see why the prices would be that high, because that many big name bands in one bill,
Yeah.
um, hotels in Birmingham have actually increased their prices up to 700%. Because obviously a lot of people will be flying in from overseas to Birmingham
no,
to watch the
Oh
show.
yeah, oh god. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the extremes. I know you can always win against me on the extremes, fucking Finian.
Well, that's just one. That's one fresh in my head. Like that was the one. Even I've like for a little bit. I thought, can I afford this? Can I go over and actually see this? And I just thought, no, there's no way I'm going to get in ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
Um, but I really, really hope like it's all professionally filmed and everything, so I can watch it later.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, there's no question with the lineup that big. It's going to be a historic thing. They're gonna be playing reruns of that on the radio for months.
Yeah, no, hell yeah, I can't wait to watch it. Um,
It's
but yeah,
a
that's.
battle extreme.
But apparently, though, in this explainer article on the ABC, they said that there are like anti-price gouging laws that do exist in the EU, in the UK. And they also say 37 US states. I mean, I can think of one example. I think coming from America, when you guys have like a hurricane or some kind of natural disaster, the price of like water bottles goes up because there's a scarcity of clean, drinkable water.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure in some US states, like it's basically illegal to jack up the price on water after something like that, which is
Doesn't
fair
matter
enough,
worth anything on the black market. Which, if everything gets knocked out, that's the only thing you're working with.
right?
Just pay your neighbors some however much for a bunch of bottles, and good luck getting it back, huh?
Yeah. Okay. Last story on the economy. Uh, our live export ban, well, which is we don't quite have the full ban in place yet. They're gradually rolling it out. There was another protest the other day. I don't know if you knew that, Nolsey. I could actually hear them from my house beeping their
I
horns.
was nearly there.
You were there,
Nearly there.
nearly there. Okay, so you heard them then.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Oh,
look,
a protest. Protest this date. Yes. I'm there.
the industry is actually quite big here in WA. So we're going to hurt a lot from that. Well, we already are hurting a fair bit. I can't remember the exact date, but in like a couple of years' time, live export is going to just be completely banned in Australia.
Your lamb
Which,
is gonna be like brought up to like folded to behind your ears. That's weird. Anyway.
yeah, but we ship a lot of like sheep, for example, to the Middle East, and they do
That's
have to
weird.
slaughter them in the halal way. I always forget what the details of that, but
I had no idea
anyway,
Australia was getting into the mail order bride industry.
yeah, that's right. You'd be amazed what we send to the Middle East. Like we send feral camels.
Camels and sand.
What?
Yeah, we have an
Yes.
excess camel and sand that we actually send to the Middle East. It's amazing.
That's wild.
Anyway, about 5 years ago, the cattle industry won a class action lawsuit against the Commonwealth government for the live export ban that they had back in 2011. So that was back during the Julia Gillard government. So that was basically ruled to be like illegal the way they did it. And to this day, compensation has not flowed to hundreds of claimants, with offers from the government being labelled as insulting. So now, the cattle industry is taking the government back to court. It's taking them to the federal court and trying to get to get a quote, it says they're taking them to court for every single cent.
Hell yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, this is based back on a court result from 5 years ago. Unfortunately, what's going on now with the incremental phase out of live exports, that is, as far as I know anyway, completely legal. There's been I don't think there has been any court challenge to it. If there has, it hasn't been successful. All they have is this decision from 5 years ago where they can get a bit of compensation money out of the federal government, but that's it.
I know Abattoir actually likes it.
What? Our abattoir likes it.
No Abattoir likes it.
No, no, I don't think so. But
Because it's
there's
shit.
a lot of
It's
there's a
really
lot of
shit.
footage from, like Extinction Rebellion and that. Like they try to like block these trucks on the road and shit. They do some really stupid things.
Can
I
you
guess we'll
tell
still.
me when those guys actually show up and etc. Like set themselves up? Like I'd like to actually go there and just stroke the men's hair and just tell them they're pretty and see how.
You stop it.
Anyway.
Okay, well, we'll move on to housing now, and we've got some figures coming out of Queensland. So land valuations in Brisbane have climbed by almost 20%, while more regional locations have seen increases of more than 230%. And they make the point here that is likely going to lead to even costlier council rates and land taxes. Yeah, no shit.
Again, like
So,
That may very well be the point.
yeah.
again, like Mackenzie from What's It News, literally showing up to a meeting with Anthony Albanese and saying like, "Hey, look, you brought in 1.8 million fucking Indians or people, and you're trying to say like, oh, we're gonna make housing more affordable."
No.
No.
Well, I mean, like Chris Minns will tell you that we need those people to actually build the houses. And he seems to want to act as if those people.
Please, need to be a house, sir.
The quality of the workmanship from my personal experience has been these people can't do a good job if their lives depend on it. And usually it's someone else's life depending on that job.
Right. I mean, uh, mass immigration will keep GDP numbers up, and it'll mean that your country won't go into a technical recession. But if you look at productivity figures, they've been going down for decades now, and they run very much in tandem with increases to migration. So that means even though we might be getting, meeting particular labour demands through the use of foreign labour, that doesn't mean they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Otherwise, our productivity rates would have gone up, but they haven't.
Yeah, it just means that the money is changing hands more often.
Yeah, and that workers are getting paid less.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's the way of driving down wages.
Actually, it's
Nice,
more.
sir.
There's more workers.
So it's, man, it's borked.
Yeah. So, well, the other story we've got on housing, this is more to do with homelessness, actually. So, over in New South Wales, they've terminated more than 130 casual lease agreements at 4 holiday parks. And this is what you guys would call a trailer park.
Mm.
We call a trailer a caravan here. And a trailer is a trailer. A trailer is something you attach to the back of your car to carry something. Anyway,
Right.
a lot of people who live in these caravan parks, like that is their house.
Yes.
Um, they live there. They do everything there. And so, not a surprise that during a housing crisis, you're going to see more and more people living in caravans. Um, and so, one of the people they profiled in this ABC story was he's an army veteran, and this he's basically got no money. It's all just tied up in this little caravan that he has at this holiday park. So that means if he is evicted from that park, he's homeless because
Yeah.
he's got nowhere to take his caravan.
Oh wow.
Or if he's priced out via the increase of the cost of the land. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, all of these
It seems
factors.
like something we've been talking about for about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And by the way, I think last week I might have been a bit harsh on when I gave a general description of homeless people. I should have clarified that like that definition of like the character of the average homeless person. I don't think we should count people like this army veteran, who lives in the caravan. We are unfortunately getting to the point where even people who say are receiving some kind of welfare payment, they still find that that is not enough for them to get affordable accommodation, which is forcing a lot of them to live in tents.
I don't think we ever went
Or
after them.
yeah, here in the States, a lot of people live in their cars as an exception. Some of them are
Yeah,
lucky enough to
private
grab
cars.
RVs, but it's it's getting worse and worse. And I've noticed that all of the people that are in these homeless encampments, they're white. The
Mm,
state
yeah,
assistance goes to everyone else first.
that's right. Yeah, and also another point of commonality is I know like lots of your veterans are homeless as well because they don't get the
Absolutely.
proper support that
I
they
believe the
should.
last statistic I saw was that your average vet spends 6 years on the streets.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that was something that really started after the Vietnam War. And when we had a lot of our troops sent overseas to serve in whatever war, Nolsey and I have talked about how, like, for example, in the Vietnam War, those veterans were given houses.
Yes.
Like once their service was done and everything, they were literally just given the land and the house all paid off, like it was just yours. Do they do anything like that nowadays?
No,
No,
they don't.
they couldn't. It would
They
be a
struggle.
huge scandal.
They struggle to even get them like free appointments with a psychologist. And obviously, a lot of veterans they need psychological help because they have post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health challenges due to being a soldier.
Yeah,
Completely understandable. But we don't even make resources like that available to them, and so yeah, then we wonder why some of our veterans end up on the streets.
yeah. Government turns you into a killing machine, and you spend your whole rest of your life trying to cope with that.
Right.
All
Okay.
right.
We'll move on to climate and energy now, and yeah, we've got a fair few stories for you under that topic today. Um, So, Peter Dutton, one of the things he said in his budget reply speech was, very expectedly, he said that the coalition will drive down energy costs. Now, I
By
don't think
giving
he
you
really made much.
$150.
There was barely any reference to nuclear, which I don't know if that was a wise move, because some people are probably going to say, "Oh, look, see, he's not mentioning nuclear because he knows how expensive it's going to be." So, I would have preferred if he would to
Kill
have a
me.
little bit more of a spirited defense of nuclear power. But anyway, he did talk about a coalition policy where gas giants would be forced to set aside 20% of their production for domestic consumption only. In other words, you cannot sell that
With
gas.
inside the Federation or just with inside fucking WA?
No, this is, yeah, that's what I was going to talk about actually. Yeah, this is just for the Commonwealth because in WA, we actually already have that. That was a policy
15.
that was what?
15%.
Oh, is it
Sorry.
50? Oh, so ours is
Yeah,
15%. Okay,
yeah.
yeah, and that was put down by Alan Carpenter,
Keith.
a former Labor premier. I gotta add,
Yes.
and this was before Labor was so obsessed with climate change policies. But the thing is, though, the policy that we do have in WA at creating gas reserves has worked. Like, I mean, we live in an era now where like we're given warnings that Victoria might face blackouts because of a low supply of gas. I remember when they first started talking about that, it was pointed out that in WA we didn't have a problem like that because of our vast gas reserves. And that was because of direct government policy saying you must preserve a certain amount for domestic consumption. So I think that's a good idea.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. The grid
Mm.
needs it, otherwise it gets overstressed.
Imagine a buffer of a fucking resource. Oh god, can you like justify that to yourself as a libertarian?
I'm not a libertarian, Nolsey.
Oh no, I'm not talking to you.
Well, we have to rely on a gas reserve because it's now like the only fossil fuel we're allowed to use
Yeah.
because we've killed our coal industry. So we've really only got gas left.
I mean, like, what? Could you ever like use the market forces to figure out that like that gas was the only thing left over? Oh god,
Well, I'll tell you
I
what,
don't know.
I don't dislike this policy in general. I think it could turn out well.
It's a
It's
good
worked in
policy.
WA. It has worked here in WA, so I don't see why it wouldn't work at the national level. The usual suspects, of course, are opposed to it, like the Greens. Um, you did have Labor criticising it as being, quote, populist anti-market betrayal of the sector. Uh,
Anti-market. That's weird.
don't you love it when Labor actually tried to say, hey, we're more free market than the Liberal Party? That they made that argument over the divestiture powers being used against Coles and Woolworths as well. Now they seem to be doing it here. Now, on that note, Albanese did actually say that a Labor government would be willing to divert domestic gas supply to the Australian market. He didn't give a number on what that would be, but he did point out that the Commonwealth does already have emergency powers to do so. So, he was not in principle opposed to it, I guess. But they still want the emphasis to be on building more green energy because that apparently is the future. So Peter Dutton said that there is no doubt the power bills will be cheaper under a coalition government.
No.
Well, look, he has said that it depends what he does. But look, he said that he's not going to give an exact figure, but he did say that modelling would be released very shortly. So that still doesn't mean he'll actually give a hard figure. And I mean, look, he might be better off not doing that because, I mean, when Labor promised that power prices would come down by $275 a year, that was an albatross around their neck for the past 3 years because the Liberal Party haven't let them forget it. And with good reason. Everyone's power prices have gone up, and the only way we've ever been given cost
Is
relief
by credits.
is credits, not by
Yeah.
the power prices actually naturally coming down as a result of, say, getting more batteries on the market or something like that. It's only ever been in the form of credits from the government. Both
The best. Again, like, how many fucking times we've been talking about for like 5+ fucking years? Nuke the power prices. Nuke it by supplying with nuclear energy. Really? Can we do that? Is that something we can do? Oh wait,
Well, look,
we can do that.
That's why I say Dutton should have talked more about nuclear in his budget reply. He seems to, I guess, maybe he's bought into the idea that just talking about nuclear is inherently toxic and the public doesn't like it. We've gone through polling before that shows that most Australians are open to the use of nuclear power. So I think he's doing that at his own detriment. But yeah, look, I think he would be better off at not coming up with a hard number like Labor did. Maybe if he came up with like just a range, like if he said, "Oh, look, we think between 50 and $100."
All right, so
something.
So, Captain American, like, how good is nuclear power?
Oh, extremely. Highly efficient, and, well, I mean, you're basically running a water turbine, and, I mean, heck, even the wealth that you gain just from the people that you have to train and build up to that level, like knowing who those people are and being able to improve their living conditions. I mean, it's the intellectual capital you gain just from the experts is massive, and of course the benefits of the nuclear power plants itself. Yeah, it's good. It's very, very good for everyone involved. I think that most people fear it just because of the name nuclear. And, you think of the atom bomb, but it's literally turning a giant turbine with water.
Yeah, or Chernobyl, and I mean, I guess that Netflix series didn't help either.
Well, that can be chalked down more to the dangers of communism than anything else. You create an environment where everyone lies, and you shouldn't be surprised when someone who is not quite as competent as they portray themselves to be is placed where they shouldn't be.
Right, and like it also prevents like the use of newer nuclear technology. Because I mean, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in America, you guys haven't actually built a new nuclear power plant in like 30 years or something like that. The
50.
Got 50 years, even more. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the design 50. The actual new construction is like 40 something odd years.
Wow. Okay.
Yep, we're basically living in tech from 50 years ago, and I think there's a grand total of 3 people who know how to maintain the San Francisco Bridge right now. They die, no one can take care of it. It just falls into the ocean. I'm not joking. We are operating on 50-year-old tech that no one but the boomers themselves knows how to work. It's going to be bad, Chief.
And that's like the irony of the anti-nuclear lobby is, basically preventing you from upgrading to more modern technology, which would also be safer technology. It's the great irony of it.
I mean, look at this entire country. Like, we have so much fucking outback which is not inhabited by anything outside of bacteria. And we also have ultra high voltage transmission lines.
Okay, now here's some, I guess, good news coming from the Northern Territory. Their renewable energy target of 50% by 2030, so that is to have 50% of the Northern Territory's energy produced by green energy by 2030, has been scrapped by the CLP. How about that?
Well, that sounds like a good thing.
It is. They're still currently my favourite government here in Australia, or at least like they're the least worst government that we have right now. So the current, I mean, look, they still got a renewables minister. I mean, that's disappointing. That should just be a portfolio that should be given the chop. But anyway, the renewables minister says that currently 20% of Northern Territory's energy mix is made up from renewables, and that gas will supply most of the Northern Territory's energy needs. And they make the point here, despite a current reliance on emergency deals with exporters. So there's that example of having to actually rely on the foreign market, even though we have a shitload of gas in our own market. So, yeah, that looks that makes Peter Dutton's policy look even more appealing. I think the fact that we have to rely on emergency sources from overseas. That's pretty sad.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, since they announced this, energy analysts, as the ABC put it, are warning that the Northern Territory is putting all of its eggs in the gas basket. And you hear about this very often, how unless you have a diversity of energy supply, you risk having blackouts, brownouts, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's true, but what wasn't coal one of those things that made up part of that diversity? And we've just almost entirely shut down coal. So the only fossil fuel we have left that's reliable anyway is gas. And also remember, 2030 is not long away. It's less than 5 years away. And I don't see how the Northern Territory could somehow get their green energy technology number up to 50% in that short space of time. The only alternative is gas. There's nothing else.
Or nuke.
Well, of course.
I hesitate to mention it, but the absolute horror of the ecological damage that would be involved in actually increasing something like solar or wind. There's a power plant in Arizona here that is smack dab in the middle of the migration of most of the West Coast bird population, right? And when they go over it, it cooks 50,000 per year. You would need to, for these numbers, you would need to put all of them in the same rough place just because of logistics. And then the amount of damage that could do to any number of things in the ecology is horrifying. It's completely
like
undesirable.
A big cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've had that issue with these wind turbine farms all the time, and but even in the case of solar panel farms, sometimes those just get shut down because they're not taking in enough solar power.
Even in the case of pink galahs, when it comes to the gin fucking wind insulation, yes, exactly the same fucking results. Not to actually piss on the idea of having some wind driven motor and etc. or some ocean driven stuff. I just want something that doesn't have like like a big fucking graveyard.
Right underneath it. Yeah. Yeah. That's,
Both in life and in material.
yeah. Yeah. It's either nuclear, dams, or, I mean, any number of the various different ways which tried and tested. Gas could work, but if, as you said, the grid is being strained by utilizing only one type of energy, then the likelihood of maintaining that is very, very poor in any long-term sense. That sounds like a real big problem.
Yes, and to add to that, there's a major LNG project, meaning natural gas, here in Western Australia. This has been proposed by Woodside, I believe, for years now, and the federal government has yet again delayed its decision um, on the what's it called, the Northwest Shelf project. So naturally, Woodside said that they're very disappointed uh, in that. So the deadline for a decision has been extended to the 31st of May. It was supposed to have already passed. Now, Peter Dutton says that in the event that the coalition is elected, that they will actually make a decision to approve the project within only 30 days of taking office. I think we covered that story last week, and yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Um, but the problem is, they've already warned, that is, uh, environmental lawyers have already warned that they would take the coalition to court over that. And thus, even if they had no chance of winning, they still would be able to stall the process, which is what they very often do. It's a very common tactic of green lawfare. Even if they know their case doesn't really stand up,
Lawfare.
nonetheless, they can just drag it out through the courts for months and months and sometimes years.
Spend
Yeah,
$20,000 and get a few years of time to hurt a company worth millions. Fuck.
yeah, and they've got that money. They've got those funds as well. Like it's amazing how well funded some of these green activist groups really are. Um,
It's nothing shy of corporate sabotage.
yeah. Okay. Now I guess another positive coming from the coalition, the federal coalition, is that well, Peter Dutton has signalled but not confirmed that he would abolish Labor's vehicle emissions standards. Now, long story short, this is a bit of a complex policy, but basically what it would mean is uh, cars that emit higher amounts of carbon would be more expensive than cars that don't. Uh, so, I mean, a Tesla, for example, would have
Mm.
zero emissions, therefore would not be made more expensive, and in fact is actually subsidized by the government. So Peter Dutton says no, he would just scrap that altogether, which is good because I think, like as we've covered before, the gas guzzlers, like the Ford Ranger, the Toyota Hilux, they are the biggest selling cars in Australia. And I remember a few weeks ago we actually went through some figures showing that the sale of electric vehicles has plummeted.
Oh yeah.
And no, that's not to do with everyone thinking that Elon Musk is like a Nazi now, because this happened well before Doge. Um, it's just a matter that like those people who wanted to signal that they are responsible environmental actors, they've all already bought their EVs and put their personalized number plate on it.
Yep.
There's not
The
really
virtue
anyone else
signaling market.
left.
Yeah, the virtue signaling market is a very limited thing.
Yeah, that's it. And pretty much all of those people now own a Tesla or some other EV.
Yeah.
and they've got a hard time actually promoting that. And it might actually get to the point now because they say that Tesla don't advertise, and the reason why is because like they literally can't keep up with demand.
Hmm.
That might change now. You might actually finally start to see Tesla ads for that bloody awful looking
Negative
cyber
advertising or some
monstrosity.
shit like that.
The what?
Negative advertising, like oh, you wouldn't buy a Tesla, as in you wouldn't fucking download a movie, would you?
Well, I'll tell you what. If only the tax cuts could fix the adhesive problem on the doors. I don't think they're
Okay,
fixing that anytime soon.
Oh yeah.
but honestly, why would anyone want to buy a Cybertruck? Why would you want to buy a vehicle that looks like that? That looks like a bit of like Lego. That just blows me away.
Because you want to be a part of the whole sci-fi movie that you saw growing up.
Mm.
Well, that's the thing. It looks like a vehicle that would have been designed like back in the 70s to look like it's futuristic. Only
Yeah.
we just,
It's like a DeLorean.
like something you'd see out of a fucking Star Wars movie or something back in the
Yeah.
70s.
It is rather absurd.
Could I say it?
Hmm? Say what?
It's like a faggot DeLorean. There we go. It's a
Remember, we are still on
DeLorean
YouTube,
made for. Oh, fuck. Okay.
amazingly, but we are still there.
All right. All right. All right. All right.
Okay. So, also, what have we got here? Oh, yes. Another green hydrogen project has been scrapped. Another one.
Shit.
And this is actually another one from South Australia. Now, we did cover, I forget which one it was, but the Labor government under Peter Malinauskas in South Australia did promise a hydrogen plant. And then they announced that no, they didn't have the funds for it anymore after they had to pay for the bailout in Whyalla for the steel workers. But now, guess what? Another one. So this is a $750 million green hydrogen plant. And yeah, it was actually supposed to be part of the Future Made in Australia program. That is, to be manufacturing green
Fuck.
energy goods here in Australia. So the global commodities company, what the hell is that? Trifigura, which owns Nearstar smelter
Try to
at Port
figure
Hedland.
out.
So they had hoped to build the world's largest hydrogen electrolyzer facility. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Hydrolyzer.
Um, okay. Uh, so this was supposed to be a 1,000 tons a day facility to set up in, well, this year, 2025. And now the developers have opted not to proceed after completing an engineering and design process last year. So all the plans were there, but now, so this was like actually mainly a private company venture, and they're just saying no, it's not financially viable now, so they've scrapped it.
Really?
Surprised, Nolsey?
No. In
I
fact,
just
I
can't believe
wanted
that.
I wanted to know about these people because I want to go and go there and be like, hey, look, I want to have a coffee next to them.
Okay. Um, oh yeah, so Anthony Albanese's energy and climate change transition, that is obviously going from fossil fuels to green energy. This had we had modelling produced here, and this was the modelling that was actually used by Labor to say, oh, your power prices will go down by X amount. They have actually abandoned that modelling. Now, this has been criticised, obviously, by both the coalition and the Greens. They say this is them waving the white flag on power prices and not cutting emissions fast enough. So, in other words, like the modelling is basically showing that we are not reaching our carbon emission reduction targets, but also we are not reducing the price of energy either. So it's a loss on both fronts.
It's nice that we get
So,
credits, though.
yeah, well, that's it. And that's the only thing you'll get. A bit of your own tax money back.
So the money is
so,
being shifted, but nothing's happening? My immediate
so
thought process
the,
is, cui bono, who benefits?
yeah. Well, it's like when Richard Branson was asked, is Al Gore a climate prophet? He said, can you spell profit? It was obvious what kind of profit he meant. So, yeah. That's a scene in Planet of the Humans, by the way. It's one of my favourite scenes of it. So anyway, yeah, this is the Powering Australia modelling. And it said that electricity bills would reduce by more than $100 between 2025 and 2030. But now the Labor government is no longer using any figures from that modelling, basically implicitly admitting that this modelling is bullshit.
Yeah.
All right.
Shit.
So Peter Dutton has said that if he is elected to government, Australia will not host the United Nations climate change meeting, which is due to be held in the Pacific, I believe, later this year. Now, he claimed that this would actually cost tens of billions to put on. Now, I mean, look, these summits are expensive, obviously.
Yes.
I mean, I have to admit, tens of billions sounds a bit excessive to me. The ABC article makes the point that analysts have doubted that figure, but nonetheless, it does cost a fair bit. And I mean, Labor's when they mention Dutton's nuclear plan, they refer to it as the $600 billion nuclear plan. It's been pointed out that Labor have already spent over $1 trillion on green energy programs. But you've got to keep in mind that it's not just the direct money that they spend on manufacturing goods or on subsidies or whatever it might be. It's also these ridiculous summits that we have, like all the time, always about bloody climate change, where world leaders just get together and talk, and basically
Agendas get pushed. Ideas get exchanged that always favor one particular point of view.
Right, and the Pacific Island nations beat a bit of money out of us because we're told that they're the ones most affected by climate change, and they because rising sea levels, are going to just completely flood their countries.
Oh my word! We live in an island paradise. How will we ever survive?
and then we just end up giving them a whole bunch of money. And by the way, one of the conditions of which we give those Pacific Island nations money is so that they vote with the United States and Israel in the UN.
Oh, of course.
When it comes to like resolutions condemning Israel, those resolutions will be voted against by Pacific Island nations, basically because they've been bribed to do so.
That's... Oh, my word.
Welcome to hell, buddy. Welcome to hell.
Okay, one story on climate change this was an exclusive in the Australian. It said that 21 of the 400 community batteries that were promised by the Albanese government in the last election are now operational. only 20 out of 400. So remember, batteries are key to green energy because green energy is intermittent, and therefore, when the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing, you need some sort of backup supply, and that obviously means a battery.
A
Well,
beta
we've only.
capacitor.
What's that?
A beta capacitor, like a actual, like, one with capacity. A beta capacitor.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, only 21 of them are currently operational. Now, this was despite the fact he was supposed to spend $200 million to support 100,000 households by storing energy from solar households during the day and drawing
Mhm.
on it at night.
That's amazing. Guess what?
What?
You can fucking silence.
I don't think that it works like that.
By the way, wasn't Elon Musk supposed to be building lots of these batteries for us?
Yeah,
What happened to
Elon
that?
Musk is clearly not a man of his word. I hate to inform you, but that man is very adept at lying. And apparently, I just learned this the other day. His father was really, really good friends with Netanyahu. Good old Bibi.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Netanyahu was on very good terms with Musk
good Elon.
himself. Yeah, Musk himself when he went to actually um various different UN conventions or whatever. It's yeah,
Mm.
it's one heck of a thing.
Okay. So let's go on to Aboriginal news. And by the way, I'm glad that Mike Enoch doesn't say Abo anymore. He actually says Abo, the proper pronunciation. I used to always cringe when Mike would say Abo. Um, but anyway, the Northern Territory, their sacred sites regulator is being overhauled. Now, the government did say that they were planning on doing this for the simple reason that they wanted to cut the amount of red tape. Now, I mean, long story short, uh, when a new project is announced or is proposed, Aboriginal groups always say that this is on some kind of sacred site and you're going to upset the rainbow serpent or whatever it is that lives there. Um, it usually does not mean
Mm.
that you can't develop the project there. Usually they're okay with that, but it means you have to give them a whole heap of money. It means the royalties have to flow to those Aboriginal corporations. Uh, Otherwise, they'll say no to it. It's blatant rent seeking. The Northern Territory government know that, and so they're looking at ways of basically being able to fast track the process. And Aboriginal groups don't like that. I guess because maybe it means there would be less money in it for them. But I honestly doubt it because one of the reasons why much of corporate Australia actually supported a yes vote in the referendum to have an Indigenous voice of Parliament was because it could basically speed
Mm.
up the process of approving projects on native lands, sacred site land. Uh, but that would simply mean, but speeding up the process doesn't mean that you would give less money to the Aboriginal corporations. If anything, it would pretty much the same, I would say. You just don't have to go through the whole uh, lengthy bureaucratic process. You can just get straight to the point where you say, okay, we'll give you X amount if you let us look for gas here, or whatever it is.
Mm.
So, obviously, we will stay updated on that one. I would love for it to be the other way around, where, not only were we actually cutting the time, but we were cutting the funds that we give to these Aboriginal groups every bloody time a new project is announced. Okay, so the other day we had a United Nations Human Rights Watch report that was produced, and it found that parents who have, that is, Indigenous parents who have their children taken away, have them taken as a result of factors beyond their control. For example, their exposure to domestic violence and homelessness. Now, basically, what this Human Rights Watch report is saying, and what the ABC is saying, is that we should all feel sorry for these Aboriginal women because it's not their fault that their kids are being taken away. Now, the alternative, of course, would mean that you would have to leave those children in the care of a family that has a domestic violence problem, or leave them out on the street because their mother is homeless. Or maybe it's both. It could well be both.
Well, maybe.
And I got to point out, someone asked me for this data the other day, so I actually looked it up. I can't remember exactly where I got it, but it is absolutely true that the current rate of child removals for Aboriginal families in Australia is higher than what it was during the so-called stolen generations. It's currently higher. Now, given that Australia wants to basically do all it can to remove that stigma and that, that stain of the legacy of the stolen generations, even though it's not true, we try to keep as many Aboriginal kids as we can in their homes. And if we have to take them away, we try to foster them out to other Aboriginal families. It's actually they have to have been in absolutely horrific circumstances to get to the point where they foster them
It's
out.
more than a blood libel. It's like a flesh libel upon upon our arms, upon our fucking I can't say it it's God.
Yeah, well, look, did you need to finish your point?
No.
Okay. So the report made the point that in WA we have one of the highest rates of children in out of home care, but apparently we have not much funding for family support services. So again, they're just trying to say, well, if we had the proper resources for these people, we had the proper programs and everything, well, then they would just magically become greater parents, and we wouldn't need to remove those children in the first place.
At what point
That's
do you cut your losses and realize that even if you intervene, you lose. If you don't intervene, you lose. These The Aboriginal population of Australia is such a difficult to work with bunch. I don't think that any form or function that you could transfer any amount of financial aid into is going to help with this.
It's
If
not.
there is, I would be absolutely floored.
No, I mean, look, we spend billions upon billions on these Aboriginal programs each year. And, only recently we went through the latest, what we call the Closing the Gap data. And that's to do with a number of different areas where we want to close the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. For example, education attainment. And every year we fail to meet basically all of those targets, despite the fact we keep pouring record amounts of money into it. It can't work. Um, and it's
Yeah.
a shame we can't like let Aborigines open casinos or something like you do in America, because it seems
You
like
think
Native
that they could
Americans.
run a casino?
That's what I mean. Because it seems to me that like at least some of those like Native Americans do have the capacity to run a casino. Oh my god!
Oh
Can
yeah,
you
they're
imagine
they're not
having
high functioning mind, but they do have a brain.
right, right. Like here in Australia, like the closest thing they would have gotten to that was like makeshift gambling back when they got those increased COVID payments. That would be the closest thing to an Aboriginal casino.
Yeah,
That
botched
you have,
dice and poorly cut dice and a little cup.
yeah, yeah. Oh.
Anyway, welcome to hell.
Man,
Okay, now uh, final story on Aboriginal news is that a principal in Alice Springs, his name is Dr. Gavin Morris, he has resigned uh, from his teaching position and also from his position on the town council. Now, this comes 6 months after he was charged with allegedly assaulting children. Um, Now, I'm definitely not advocating the assault of children by any means, but I can't help but wonder, considering this guy was a principal at an Alice Springs school, was it a case of the kids were actually assaulting him and he just simply defended himself?
Mm,
I've got to ask that question because we know that like Aboriginal kids get violent and yes, they will attack even teachers and principals. So, like, this article is obviously designed to demonize this guy. And look, if he is guilty, then obviously that's wrong. You don't assault kids. But I have to wonder if he was just acting in self defense. Yeah, you know.
maybe. I don't know. Like,
right at the schoolyard, and this poor sod wound up. I could buy it, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
There's some school districts here in the States where yeah, it's bad. It's a similar environment, and there's remarkably few people who are willing to work in those districts as a direct result.
Do you guys in America? Do they like the Native Americans complain that there was like an attempt to wipe them out via forced adoption or anything like that?
Uh, there's a little bit of whinging of the Trail of Tears, but I think that most of the whinging comes from the leftists. The the Native Americans have full autonomy, and they even get to purchase adjacent land and increase their hold over their territory. So ultimately, on a long enough time scale, yeah, it's completely possible for them to just keep growing. Um, they they don't really complain. They don't really whinge at all. They just kind of exist as their own separate entity, and yeah, I guess they kind of accept what happened and moved on.
Well, yeah, no, look, that is true to an extent here as well, because you'll often hear like an Aboriginal person or a part Aboriginal person say that they never realised they were part of the stolen generation, or they never realised their mother was a part of the stolen generation. And it's like, how could you not know that? They only find out when some kind of white left wing activist has told them that. Oh,
Mm.
because your mother was adopted out or went to a foster home or an orphanage or
the
whatever.
white left wing activist,
Therefore, that means your
Jewish.
mother's part of the stolen generation. Well, yeah, I know a lot of them are Jewish as well. Yes, but I mean, a hell of a lot of them are white too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
So it's a lot of it is like you said, just people being used as bludgeons, but it's not. Like by and large, I think it's not that big of an issue for the people in charge and their interests as far as it goes. Like they can get a lot of their anything, just by continuing as they are and growing. Would that we had a similar circumstance.
Yeah. All right. So let's go on to the ever-related issue of crime. Um, so in Queensland, as we know, they've just reintroduced what they refer to as adult crime, adult time. So that
Mm,
means that if juveniles commit a
no.
certain type of crime, they're given a sentence either the same or very similar to that of what an adult would get. So now the Premier, David Crisafulli, is actually uh, seeking to
No.
add other forms of crime to it. So that would include rape, aggravated attempted robbery, attempted murder, arson, and torture charges. Uh, yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Wait,
Uh,
rape wasn't included in the starting of the bill?
yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. It's like I'm looking at these ones like attempted murder and that, and it's like, yeah, okay, surely this stuff should have been added
Yeah.
to the list. Um, but yeah, like if you're a juvenile and you have committed murder in here in Australia, you'll do something like 5 years jail. Seriously, that's like all you'll do.
That's it.
Yeah. Whereas an
Why aren't
adult,
there
will serve about 10.
why aren't there like that's similar to some of the laws that I've seen in like Brazil where they have literal gangs running around, um like actual like people who are hired to kill others. Why wouldn't you have some like I'm not going to finish that thought.
That's good.
Well,
I on the off
I,
chance that
no,
someone actually
yeah.
does wind up, I don't.
Well, it's like in that Offspring song where they say if you're under 18, you won't be doing any time. Sometimes gangs do outsource their work to children because they know that they're going to receive like a very minor penalty if they do get caught. So that does happen.
Yeah, that's it's horrifying.
Yeah, and I mean these are the type of crimes that that are on the increase because, well, in the case of Queensland, it's mainly because of bloody Pacific Islanders and Africans. Queensland
Yeah,
was where the 7-year-old grandmother was stabbed to death by a Sudanese piece of shit. So,
of course.
yeah. And that, of course, means that, you need more draconian police powers. I mean, not that I don't support, harsher or, tougher on crime approaches. I do. But, like, it would be nice to live in a country that just didn't need those kind of laws in the first place. That didn't need to be so tough on crime because crime just isn't really an issue, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
hands-off approach tends to be better for our sorts, anyways.
yeah, I mean, like in Iceland, for example, the police don't even carry guns because they just don't need to. It's like a 99% small white population, and crime is virtually non existent. Wouldn't
I
it just
mean,
be nice if we lived like that?
isn't it? I wouldn't be surprised when it comes to Iceland if even in the biggest city that they've got, everyone there is on a first name basis with everyone else.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. Um, that's why a lot of people, like they say, when white people get forced out of all their countries in the West, like the last one left will be Iceland, and we're all just going to like take refuge over there.
Mm, maybe Oriana.
Okay,
Maybe.
now back in the Northern Territory, they're going to introduce legislation to restore mandatory sentencing provisions for repeat domestic violence breaches. So a minimum 7-day mandatory sentence was repealed by the former Labor government, and the CLP now want to reintroduce it. Now, of course, women's legal services are concerned that the rushed legislation will increase a real risk to life for Northern Territory women. I'm not sure how it would, considering it would be locking up more of those men who are threatening their lives. So,
Are they saying that the act of being punished for domestic violence would lead people to wind up dead?
that seems to be like the logic of where they're coming from here. But look, I'll tell you what it is. These laws are going to disproportionately affect Aboriginal people in Northern Territory. Remember, this is the territory with the highest per capita population of Aborigines.
Non-humans.
And the Women's Legal Services is also, to a large extent run by Aboriginal activists. They don't have to necessarily be Aboriginal themselves, but they are Aboriginal activists nonetheless. And any kind of law that puts more Aborigines in jail, they're going to be opposed to, even if that does mean improving the safety of Aboriginal women. They will still oppose it.
Well, you know what sounds like a great suggestion here? Add mandatory sentencing for murder.
Wow. Guess what? We can't do that.
Yeah, like, where we do have mandatory sentencing, however, is our federal hate speech laws.
Oh, God, that's
There
terrible.
There are minimum fines and minimum jail sentences imposed if you are caught breaking our brand new hate speech laws. That even the Labor and the Greens, who are supposed to be against mandatory sentencing, voted for.
Oh, Party A and Party B, the only thing they agree on is whatever the Slow-mo wants. Fuck.
Exactly. Okay, just a quick story from WA. The Electoral Commissioner, Robert Kennedy, it's an interesting name, has taken unplanned leave. This is as the vote counting continues on postal votes, etc., for the WA election. And basically, it's being suggested that this guy, Robert Kennedy, is being forced out of the job because on the day there was actually a shortage of staff and ballot papers, and some people didn't even get to vote. And that's the kind of stuff you expect from a third world country, not in Australia. So yeah, there's a good chance that he won't be returning from his unplanned leave. All right, let's go to the federal election. Like I said, it's been called now for the 3rd of May, and we will be sure to cover that live on the Race Alive on the day. So we'll start off with polls. So the latest YouGov poll. So this modelling shows that Labor is ahead in 10 seats where it was behind only 6 weeks ago. That puts it in a much stronger position of forming a majority government. And it also finds that on a two-party preferred basis, Labor is on 50.2%, and the coalition is on 49.8%. So looking a bit better for Labor in the YouGov data. Now, in the news poll, again, Labor has received a small jump in support. And on a two-party preferred basis, we have Labor on 51 to the coalition's 49. So, yeah, I mean, look, I still think we're going to end up with a minority Labor government. I think Labor will end up with more seats than the coalition, but not enough to form a majority. And we'll have to see
Okay.
the what kind of fragile alliance they will make out of that. Okay. Now, Peter Dutton has had a few more thought bubbles, or maybe you could just call them brain farts. I think I'd go with the latter. Last week we talked about this idea he was floating to have a referendum on deporting dual citizens who are criminals. I would support that, but
yes.
I don't see why the government couldn't just do that by itself. Like, why we need to have a referendum on it. But also, Peter Dutton has also floated the ideas of having a referendum to recognise Indigenous Australians in the Constitution, and also for having fixed 4-year terms at the federal level. So he floated these ideas, but he has now ruled them out. So this was 3 referendums that this guy had proposed in like 1 week. And also, I got to remind people that back when the referendum campaign was going on for the Indigenous voice, Peter Dutton said that if he were elected, he would hold another referendum for that. Then, of course, the no vote romped it in, and Dutton said that Australians no longer had an appetite for any more referenda, and he was right. But why then would he go and propose another 3 referenda since then? Yeah. It's not good optics. So there's been a lot of hecklers lately. There's been the usual suspects, which are green activists who love just screaming and shouting, and they love to get up on stage and hold out a placard or something.
Only fucking like the night. Sorry.
Security are usually quite slow in kicking them out as well, you find.
Yeah.
And they love doing it to the coalition a bit more. But yeah, we get, what was the name of that guy, Nolsey, who was actually asking about housing prices and its connection to immigration? Who was that guy? I'm not sure if Nolsey can hear me. But anyway, that was actually one of the disruptions that I was in favour of. And it's an issue that both sides continue to duck. Remember, even Peter Dutton says he doesn't want to cut migration. Even though last week he was saying, oh yeah, I do, because I want to cut the amount of temporary visas. Oh no, sorry, I want to cut the amount of permanent visas. Well, who cares? That just means more people are going to come through temporary visas. No one will actually commit to a reduction in net immigration.
I imagine that particular interruption was gotten rid of with all haste.
He was, yeah, definitely. Straight away.
Yeah, that's aggravating.
So here's kind of a funny story, actually. The independent federal MP, Andrew G., he blamed an inexperienced staff member for a bit of a social media gaffe. So what happened here was Andrew G. went and posted something on Facebook. I'll just read a bit of it here. It says, this afternoon a constituent contacted my office who told us she had been cold called by a person who identified himself as someone from the National Party and who then told blatant lies about who I was going to preference in this election. Someone then tried to post a reply to that post saying, thank you, Andrew G. I am new to the area and have received multiple texts from the Nationals and seen nasty ads in the paper from the Teal mob. It has helped me see who the good guy is. So that post posted in response to Andrew G was posted by Andrew G. Uh, this
I think there's some trickery going on here, some hijinks,
yeah.
some shenanigans.
So what was supposed to happen here was this staff member who obviously works for Andrew G was supposed to reply to this post with a comment that made Andrew G look good. But I don't think he was supposed to actually comment with Andrew G's profile. It, it was supposed to come from just, a random member of the public who was impressed with Andrew G.
Man couldn't be bothered to switch accounts first. He
Yeah.
was just too enthusiastic.
So, yeah, quite an embarrassing gaffe, I think. This is probably even worse than that one last week when that husband of a Teal member took down the placard and he
Yeah.
was actually wearing teal at the time. Okay, and just finally on the election, Albo has accepted thousands of dollars from a long-term senior office holder of a controversial Chinese group that has been red flagged by the Department of the Attorney General as an agent of foreign influence. Now, that agent of foreign influence is, where is it? The Australian Council for the Promotion of Peaceful Reunification of China. In other words, that is a body that supports military conquest of Hong Kong and Taiwan. To keep those provinces part of China. So Albo's accepted a lot of money from them. It's funny how that Labor very often get caught up in accepting this dirty Chinese money.
So he's going to resign, right?
Yeah.
He's going to
Of
resign,
course,
right?
no. I mean, Labor did lose a senator to this stuff, Sam Dastyari, and I was so rejoiceful when that happened because he was one of the most irritating members of Parliament there was. And that was because he was basically being bribed. He had his travel bills paid for by some Chinese oligarch
Mm.
for saying pro China stuff. Like he was saying, oh, we've got no business in the South China Sea. Like China should just do whatever they want there. And then yeah, he got caught out and he had to resign because of that. But no, Albo definitely will not resign. Okay, so the Teals. In the seat of Goldstein, the sitting member we might remember is the Teal Independent Zoe Daniel, former ABC journalist as well. It's revealed that she has already had almost $600,000 donated to her through climate and integrity activist groups. Now, that does not include Climate 200. Climate 200 have donated a separate $420,000 into Zoe Daniels' campaign. Now, one of the reasons why they're really focusing on this is because this was the seat taken from the Liberal Tim Wilson, and Tim Wilson is actually running again for this seat. Now, polling recently released shows that there's been a surge in support for the Liberal Party, and on a two-party preferred basis, it's now 54 in favour of the Teals compared to 46 for the Liberals. 54 for the Liberals, 46 for the Teals. So the Teals are very, very nervous about losing this seat back to the Libs. And, I think one of the big reasons why the Libs have this surge in support is because of, the Jews there. It's the seat of Goldstein, after all, in a city, Melbourne. And we know that the Jews are basically just steadfastly behind the coalition now. Not only that, but when Tim Wilson was the member for Goldstein, he secured a very lucrative security package for the Jewish community. In other words, a whole ton of money that we're told the Jewish community simply spends on security measures.
Oh, so
So
stuff
yeah,
like the Shamram,
like what?
stuff like the Shamram over in New York, an
Well,
independent
look, I
police
don't.
force which protects them and only them.
Yeah, I remember that was something on the cards. Uh, in the
Quiet
last
about
election,
this because
they
yes,
were talking
this is
about like
something less than the
private.
shaman.
What's that?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I do remember like the idea being floated of like, yeah, like private police, but also some people don't know this, but there is a private ambulance service for Jews in Melbourne.
Oh, yep.
Um, we covered it on one of our shows, and I mean, I know you guys have one because like the was it the Crown Heights riots were basically started because of that, because like a private ambulance treated like a Jewish patient, but refused to treat the black person. Um, I forget how
I
that
don't know the
story goes.
specifics, but I could readily believe that, yes.
Yeah, like it
Um,
was in. I think what happened was it was actually like a Jew like crashed their car and like actually ran over like a couple of black people. And then when the ambulance got there, they treated the driver, but not the people he drove into. So, so that
if there's
caused
a
like
power
this.
play in there.
Yeah, and that like expectedly caused this riot. Like it created like an anti-Jewish pogrom that was led by blacks in New York. But yeah, we've got that kind of stuff here as well. A lot of people don't know that, but yeah, we've got like a private ambulance service for Jews, and yes, we have like private security details and stuff for them as well.
Mm.
But I also got to point out that a lot of the time, that money that's set aside for security is not necessarily spent on security.
Oh, it
It's
goes
just
straight
gobbled
into
up.
bribes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay. So we've got some data out that says that Teal independents have sided with the Greens in at least two-thirds of all divisions in the last 3 years of Parliament. Yeah, I've seen stuff like this before. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find like a breakdown, like because I mean, I'm sure that if a lot of those divisions were based on climate and the environment, then yeah, the Teals would sit with the Greens most of the time. But when it would come to other like measures to do with the economy, I'd say they'd be more inclined to actually sit with the Liberals on issues like that. So yeah, this is just part of like the Murdoch press just wants to say that the Teals are just another form of the Greens, just kind of like funded through a different body. And I mean they sort of are, but
I wish they
I think
were.
they're well. Look, I basically consider them to be a hybrid of the Liberal Party and the Greens. You know, like they take their economic policies from the Liberals, but they take their environmental policies from the Greens. That's obviously a very big simplification.
Right.
I think it stands up.
It does, unfortunately. They are like old school Jews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now on the Greens, um, of course, they keep talking about what would happen if there was a minority Labor government and they went into power with Labor in that minority government. So Adam Band has said that they would not be requesting a ministerial position in return for their support. Remember, there is actually precedent for that. The Greens have been given ministerial positions in Tasmania and in the Australia Capital Territory when they've gone into minority government with Labor. It hasn't been done at the federal level, however. So we did have this in 2010, where there was an agreement between the Labor Party under Julia Gillard and the Greens. But yeah, back then they were not given a front bench position. Instead, we got the carbon tax. And I think the Greens knew that that was already kind of pushing it a bit, so they didn't ask for anything more. Now, they have said that they are ruling out any deal with Peter Dutton. So that's not surprising. A minority coalition government with the Greens, that's not going to happen. Adam Band has said so.
Mm.
Now, he has said, though, that some of the issues they would be approaching Labor with, if such a minority government was formed, would be free dental visits covered by Medicare, free GP visits, as in bulk billing just across the board, cap rental increases, and wipe out all student debt. Well, we've already sort of commented on the rental increases, and the Greens just have this stubborn refusal to admit that housing prices are influenced by immigration. They just will not accept that very obvious reality. So they want price controls instead. But, look, you could have basically, universal dental care, universal health care in an all white society where you don't have a free rider problem. With Australia's current racial makeup, hell no, you can't have that. We would just go broke like overnight, pretty much. Wiping the student debt thing, yeah, that's a bit different. Maybe you could call me a socialist and say, yeah, I guess I can. That's a policy that I could get on board with. Yes. What were you going to say, Nolsey?
Call you the socialist.
Oh, you're going to. Okay, well, fine. So be it. But again, I would only do such a thing if we were to massively reform the university sector. For example, just abolish foreign students completely, utterly, just completely get rid of them. Have much higher entrance scores, and also say like have a 3 strikes you're out rule. Like if you fail 3 units, you get kicked out of uni. You shouldn't be there. We can't do what the Greens do and say, all right, abolish all debt and do like free uni for everyone. Oh, and by the way, everyone should go to uni as well. And even if they fail, they can keep going to uni and just keep studying. No, that's a completely unfeasible and unviable project that you just couldn't possibly fund. But they're the kind of utopian ideas that the Greens have. Okay, so just quickly in South Australia, the former leader of the Liberal Party, David Spears, has now put in a guilty plea for drug supply charges. So this stems from him, a photograph of him actually like racking up a line of cocaine on I think it was on a kitchen bench. So originally, he was denying all of this. Now he's pleading guilty. So it'll probably only be a fine because he's a first time offender. And I think even though these are drug supply charges, it's not like I think that just meant he was giving it to people. He wasn't selling it. And he certainly wasn't selling large quantities of it. If he was, that would probably mean a jail term, which would be quite unusual for a former leader of the Liberal Party. Okay, so on salmon farming, legislation has just passed. Basically protecting salmon farming in the Macquarie Harbour. So environmental groups have said that these amendments are a death warrant for an endangered fish for which the harbour is its only known habitat. And guess what? They said that they're looking at legal options to stall this process. So yeah, if you're wondering, the only reason why salmon farming is controversial in Tasmania is because of these green groups,
Hmm.
and they've still got a lot of them left. That's where Bob Brown lives, by the way, former Greens leader, and now he's head of the Bob Brown Foundation. Now, on that note, oh no, sorry, they are taking it to court. That's right. So that story was from a few days ago, but a more recent story says that the Bob Brown Foundation has applied um, uh, to the court in Tasmania to challenge these new environmental amendments passed by uh, the Albanese government. Um, so yeah, they'll be
Do
fighting that
these
out in court.
do these green groups not know that they can work with the various different businesses which
Well,
they're
no.
they're trying to condemn with these laws? Because you can work with these specific businesses, and like protecting various different fish species isn't it's not an uncompelling thing.
Something is
Hmm.
mutually exclusive. Yes, no, flip way. No and no.
Well, I
I
think
guess
that
there's
they're
too much
probably
of a
aware of that. I mean, this is them just one. I do think I do sort of agree with that. The idea that many greens are watermelons, in that green on the outside, red on the inside. There
mm,
is ideologically, I think, among many members of the green movement, not all of them, but a desire to deindustrialize the West. Like when it comes to supporting green energy, because they just want to shut down all of these large industrial projects. And that's also why they don't like nuclear energy. They also just hate the idea of, these massive agriculture programs that are done on a huge scale for us to eat animals, to eat flesh. They just hate that idea. They
mm,
might float the idea that it's just because of an endangered species, but there's always an ulterior motive, you know? There's
yeah.
always far more within the green agenda.
You can look at a thing, see its purpose by what it does well. And if they're dodging actually working with all these different people, if their culture is entirely litigious and prohibitive, then
Mm.
that says something about the people themselves, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So just a few quick stories to round us out. Another announcement to do with health funding, and that is $355 million to. This is federal funding going to St John of God Midland Public Hospital. So that's right here in WA.
Mm.
In education news, students in Papua New Guinea are being strongly encouraged by the current Albanese government to apply for scholarships to study climate change, gender studies, and disability policy. Now, these are scholarships that we give to students from Papua New Guinea because they're basically too poor to run a decent higher education sector themselves. But at least when we were running these programs, we would encourage them to take on courses such as agriculture, medicine, and education. In other words, fields where you can actually get a job.
Or
Now that,
vital trades in their home country.
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, what kind of a fucking job can you get if you've got a gender studies degree? The only job you can get is if you become an academic, and that would require getting a PhD or at least an honors.
Oh, it
Um,
could involve being a mid-level employee in some sort of government operation.
yeah, yeah, that I guess. So this is part of like we give Papua New Guinea, they take on some of our um, refugees, like they resettle them there. Um, and they do that in return for, say, for us, like funding their broadband network over there. But there's a shitload of other programs that we do as well. Um, it's said something like two-thirds of all women in Papua New Guinea have experienced some form of sexual assault. And yeah, that sounds believable to me. So Australia feels a responsibility to engage and, close the gap in Papua New Guinea, just like we do with Aborigines here. And
You
so
can't
we
save
have,
him. You can't
no,
save him.
you
Stop
can't.
trying, bro.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, Papua New Guinean people, they're basically the same as our Torres Strait Islanders, which is our other indigenous ethnic group. And, their IQ is like pretty much the same. I mean, like, it's at least under 70, functionally retarded. I'm
They're
not saying
they're
that here.
very desperate people.
Yeah. And by the way, to this day, they practice cannibalism in Papua New Guinea. I mean, at least Australian Aborigines have given up on that now. They used to do it. But in Papua New Guinea, they still do it.
Well, maybe this is an elaborate plan to introduce some cultural awareness into the gender studies groups.
Maybe, maybe. Oh,
Teach
God.
them about the glories of cannibalism and how they should how they should love their neighbor.
God. Okay, quickly in Queensland, the Queensland government has broken an election promise by scrapping the final stage of the Sunshine Coast rail line. This means that rail line will not extend all the way to, oh God, Maroochydore. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Anyway, it'll now end at Bertinya, and bus services will connect commuters to Maroochydore and the Sunshine Coast. Last story. This is on dog laws. This is coming from the Northern Territory. So, a review has just been conducted recommending changes to New South Wales regulations on dog ownership. Now, that includes stricter fines for having an unregistered dog, licenses for certain breeds, such as Rottweilers and Mastiffs, and minimum safety standards for enclosures. Now, I would have otherwise left this story out, not bothered covering it because it doesn't seem all that interesting. But the reason why I wanted to cover it is because they've taken aim at particular breeds of dogs. In this case, Rottweilers and Mastiffs. Uh, People might be aware that in New South Wales, it is already illegal to own a pit bull terrier. This was actually law that was passed by the Bob Carr Labor government. Oh God, a while ago now, would have actually been over 20 years ago. And I remember at the time, Bob Carr said that a pit bull was a killing machine on a leash. And you know what? I agree that pit bulls, mastiffs, Rottweilers, etc., they are more dangerous breeds of dogs, and there should be different rules applied to them. Because this review was actually done after there had been a number of fatalities, that is, people mauled to death by dogs. And when people are mauled to death by dogs, they tend to be mauled to death by these kind of breeds. But I just bring it up to say, if we can recognize these differences in breeds among dogs, why don't we ever recognize those differences among humans? And therefore, actually, yes, have laws that are applied differently to different breeds or races of people. Why is it that even, because Bob Carr, this was a Labor government. Labor governments are willing to recognize differences among dogs and the different breeds. Now we've got a new Labor government Chris Mins, who's doing the same. Please tell me why differences can exist among dogs but not among humans.
Because that would raise some very uncomfortable questions. Like, would it be necessary to have an animal handler's license to employ an abo?
Yeah.
Or a pit bull.
All right. Well, guys, that is where we will leave it. A bit shorter than last time. So, yeah, thank you to Nolsey and, of course, to our guest Cook for making it on today. It
A
was a good
pleasure.
episode. Enjoyed that. So, yeah, usual stuff. Racer.biz. And, well, actually, Cook, is there anything you'd like to plug before we call it a night?
The occasional Zeke stream over on Control Alt Right. It's not much, but it's at Odyssey at Zeke Kyle. Take care.
Okay, cool. Send me the address for that, and I'll put it in the show description. Okay,
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys for listening to episode 243, and we will see you next week.